what's going on, it's Preacher, and you might remember a couple of months ago, we looked at Revelations Online, an MMO that was sent our way, and so many of you actually used our referral link that the guys have got back in touch, and they want the big dog's opinion. They were like, what you did was great, and loads of people liked it, but can we get Mikey having a look at this thing? We want to see what he thinks of it from his side of things. So here I am, actually. It was pretty good. So we made a deal. They've paid for me to have a look at it because we're so busy right now. I said, look, I don't have time. They're like, look, we'll pay you. We don't pay for your opinion, though. We don't pay for your opinion. I want that to be absolutely clear. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't, and anything in between. But also that we got a lot of codes to give out to you guys. So there's a Twitter link down below. So if you want to give it a try, we've got a lot of codes to give out because it is a free-to-play MMO. But I've been afraid. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I've been afraid of looking at MMOs for a while, because the last time I deeply looked at an MMO, I ended up playing it for 12 years, and that still is an ongoing number. Not to say I haven't played other MMOs, I did dabble in Star Wars, and more recently, actually, was the Elder Scrolls MMO. I had a dab with that. They wanted me to take a look at Elder Scrolls. In fact, we had another deal with those guys where they paid me to look at it, and I was like, I really don't think I read this game. They gave me a really early access version. I was like, I'm not ready to make a video on this. And they're like, okay, square deal, we'll leave it there. So I've spent, considering I'm mostly done with my Argus stuff now, a day or so looking at this game. And looking at it, because Andy gave like a big overview of the game, and looking at it from my perspective, like the more mechanical side of stuff, what's the combat really like if we get in depth with it. So what I decided to play was a Blade Master. Looking at the description, it's like the warrior tankish kind of play style. That's what I wanted. I wanted something I could tank on, do some dungeons. That's where my meat and two veggies, as you guys well know. And also get a visceral style, especially after playing like a mage most of Legion. I was looking forward to playing something with a bit of melee and getting involved in the PvE and stuff. So, what have I found then? What is my opinion on this? And do I think it's worth your time to have a look at it and see if you want to spend a few hours here, especially if you are in this mid-period before Antorus launches? Is this something you can maybe dabble in? Well, first of all, it's a Japanese MMO. Now, I've been playing through, if you've been following the stream, I've actually been playing through the Metal Gear Solid franchise over the last couple of weeks with a very lovely audience of people. And I've got to say, the Japanese stuff has kind of desensitized me pretty heavily to what I saw in here. I knew what I was getting into, but I know it's a big off-putter for a lot of you, but I've got to be honest, like, unless it's really up close, they have these, like, dialogue boxes that go on, where they zoom in on certain characters. Those ones could be a little bit strange if there's like a bunny outfit. It actually seems out of place to me in the game. And it's certainly not used a lot. Unless you purposely decide to make a character look like that, which is your choice, it's not used a lot at all. It's all done in a similar Japanese style, but any of the really silly ones, I've seen one or two, but I've seen equally as many over-the-top sort of samurai dudes going along with that, so that's on you. I did dress my character with a bunny on my head and some sparkly glasses, because why not? Why not? We're having fun, let's get involved in it. But as soon as you zoom out and you roll that mouse wheel back, it's not a big deal at all, in my opinion. It's just the style of it. And honestly, the game had some fantasy things happen that I really do wish were in WoW. I'm not going to lie. Like, I came to a bay area, watery bay area, and the first thing that I saw was like a space whale flying around the sky and then crashing into the water. And I was like, man, I love that kind of stuff. I really do. They have the giant mountains and stuff like we have in WoW, but it's just those occasional moments. It was similar to Breath of the Wild. For those of you who've not played Breath of the Wild, there are essentially like world boss dragons that are flying around the area, but there's not really a mention of them for most of the game until you suddenly see one. And you just like, what? And I kind of had one of those moments in here, which made me think, oh, God. I like the fantasy stuff. It's been a complaint of WoW of mine for a while, is it's not enough, you know. I want a bit more fantasy stuff. I know some people really like the grounded aspects of it, but I'm still playing a game. I kind of want to see some fantasy craziness going on. We did have that stuff in TBC and in Wrath, so I'd like a little bit of that back, and this kind of brought that home for me. Before we go any further, though, mechanically, I just got to say, I'm absolutely in love with the interact button. Like, I would give anything to have this in WoW right now. I would give anything. What does it do? If you approach something that you can interact with, so it'd be a vendor, a quest NPC, an item you can pick up off the floor, it just gives a little box to say, hey, something near you can interact with. Do you want to press a button? And it's keybound to F. F's just your interact key, or, you know, in most games it's E. And as soon as you press it, it just does it for you. I am in love with this thing. It's so good. I don't know about you guys, but when Zura Zura in Argus all breaks up on the Vindicaar, and you have to pick those little pieces up. I play so zoomed out, that's actually really irritating for me. Like, I have to zoom in a hell of a lot to click those tiny little things. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. If I could have an interact button for that stuff, oh my god, I'd be so happy. So happy. It would also prevent douches from making giant mounts and standing on NPCs, because as long as you're pretty close to them, you could just press your interact key and you never have to click the screen. I haven't clicked the screen in ages in this game, and I've noticed it. It's been noticeable. So that's certainly something I would absolutely adore to see move into more games. Absolutely would do. My Blade Master then, how did it start out? Well, I obviously went DPS spec. I went with the DPS spec, and I do get 2 stances. First thing it gave me was a couple of stances. One that increased my parry, so obviously the defensive tanking stance, and then it gave me like a DPS stance to mess around with. And then I started very quickly unlocking various skills. Now, there is kind of a skill tree system, but it's not like you would expect in sort of like a WoW or old school WoW type system. But this game does have a lot of old school and new school aspects to it, which I thought was pretty cool. Old school wise, what it's got is little short-term temporary buffs. So anybody remembers like Battle Shout back in the day was something you had to keep up. It was like a 5-minute buff. And this one's like 30 seconds. But you want to keep an eye on that, because mine that's very similar to that actually gives me a huge critical damage bonus, which is really nice to keep up and put as part of my rotation, is to watch this ticking down. And they already have a built-in sort of we'd use so Tell Me When or WeakAuras, and you can use add-ons with this game, but even in the default layout it does have a nice accurate tracker right near your character to increase your critical power, which is really nice actually. I forgot about that kind of stuff. Instead of just being all hogs to the wall, we're in the world of streamlining, right? It's kind of nice to have these callbacks to old school standard stuff, which was keeping these reasonable buffs up. One thing though that I did question as I unlocked more and more built abilities was the lack of synergy between abilities. So let me explain it. There is synergy here, and you guys know I like my synergies. So an example would be like Bestial Wrath, right? For a BM Hunter. You cast that, and every time you cast Dire Beast, it reduces the cooldown of that. So there's that synergy going on between the two abilities. Now here, there is synergy on individual abilities, but not much going on between various abilities. So what I found myself doing was finding like, what's the most powerful ability, dealing with that and getting that one done first, then moving on to the other abilities in a sort of sequential order. It's very much more like a rotation. Now, I think that might appeal to some of you, is the idea that this kind of feels, so far, like there's a sort of set rotation. It's like, this is the most powerful thing, use that, then use the next most powerful thing, then use the next most powerful thing, and then see what's coming back off cooldown and then manage that way. And in between there, you do have stuns and ranged attacks and stuff. So I'll give an example. I have a ability called Shadow Breaker, right? Which is an instant skill. However, it's like a channeled ability, but you have to hold the button down, which isn't something we do in WoW. If you think about, say, Fists of Fury, you hit it, and then off it goes, right? And then it's doing its thing, and it's just channeling just means it's got a cast bar. This one is physically challenged, which you do feel. I want to point out, you do feel like when you hold it down is that you are channeling into the mob. You can still move around and stuff like that. But it's stacking more damage on there, and there's like a final ability. And they have a similar one called Merciless Strike, which is, you can spam the button, but you can hold it down as well, which I think was a bit of convenience. And it's also all skill shots. Like, pretty much everything I have is a skill shot. When I moused over the abilities, it actually showed me, like, the arc. It gave me, like, a diagram of where it's going to hit, which radius it's going to hit, what cooldown it's got, how I want to manage it, and the various different things it does. Does it finish off with a knockdown? Does it finish off with some sort of stacking debuff? And it gave me all this little information here that was really clear, actually. It broke it up in a way that, let's say if I was doing like a WoW vid, it broke it up in such a way that I would want to explain an ability. Like, a lot of people do this when they do guides. It's like, there might be a tooltip in WoW that's like a paragraph of stuff, instead of just breaking it down into its important component pieces, which I actually thought was really a really nice thing to do. And I like the pictures and diagrams and stuff. I did bring up skill shots there. Been a while since I've played with skill shots. Been a while since my League of Legends days. It was a very early life for me of playing the old League of Legends and skill shots and stuff. Although I have played quite a few skill shot based games recently. But they also gave the enemy skill shots. And the last time I dealt with having to actively dodge quickly, so there's speed dodging here. You can double tap or hold shift in a direction and you'll do a speed dodge in order to get out of an area quickly. But the way that's done is because enemies will drop skill shots on you, which could be a conal arc, so it's like a huge radius in front of it, or it'd be a channeled spell going directly at you, and you have to do some skill shots while doing MMO bosses, which is I like it. I believe it was the Elder Scrolls that was the last time I did that with some blocks and parries and things like that. And I find that really interesting, especially as a fan of like more visceral combat. Certainly looking at like Souls and things like that and any other RPGs where you have to do some sort of skill-based stuff. And it also prevents you from just dwelling on cooldowns. Just adds that next little bit of combat. And again, that was something I really enjoyed about this game. Leveling was much more fun when I could actually get involved in that. And finding enemies that actually had skill abilities was a real big bonus. Dungeons then. So I've done a few dungeons. Basically, what I found, and it's always very confusing with terminology, isn't it? It's always really confusing with terminology, is anything that's instance in Revelations is called a raid. So while we'll call a raid is, you know, something 10 man and above or whatever, pretty much, then in this, anything that's instance is a raid. But what they've done is segmented off the instances and then done sort of like a Mythic Plus system. So you might do a dungeon very early on. It's like introducing you to it, and that can be done solo. I quite like this because it doesn't have any of that group social pressure for people who aren't comfortable in dungeons at first. So your first introduction to the dungeon is actually a solo effort. It's like the trial version or normal mode or an LFR version, for whatever you want to call it. But the easiest version is done solo. And you can actually just explore and run around, make mistakes. Like that. Really like that. If I want to go into a dungeon for the first time and everyone's just speeding ahead of me all the time, then I might miss out on some stuff that if I go in solo, first of all, I can have a mooch around. I can take my time. I can have a look and see what's going on while still not wasting my time or hoping the dungeon's empty and the enemies are all easily soloable. I thought that was a quite nice way of doing things, honestly. It'd be like getting something as simple as Cathedral of the Eternal Night, but the easiest run, it won't give you much in terms of reward, obviously, but it does let you run it solo. So you can spend some time there, you can figure out what the boss enemies do, you can get some little quest rewards and things like that. You're not going to get the best gear out of there, obviously, but what you can do is just do it in your own pace and check out routes to go and learn it properly, rather than going in with a group who just charges through the place, and by the end of it, bosses have been crushed to death, and you don't really know what happened. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's plenty of people who've gone into one like, oh, this is a dungeon, and some people have just buzz cut through it. Either even early stuff like heirloom gear and stuff like that. Yeah. So the first sort of raid I did was the Trial of the Four Kings. This is an interesting one. It's a bit like the Brawlers Guild, and you can do this daily. So they have these daily challenges and stuff like that, and a very odd one that I wasn't used to, certainly because while I was not free to play, I'm not used to this kind of stuff. And that was getting rewards, like gifts, given to me all the time, because they gave me a deluxe account to mess around with. So I got all these like rewards and things that just came to me. It's like, you got boosts and you got this. So we will talk about the payment model towards the end, but I want to kind of go through the gameplay first, because this is stuff that all the early gameplay certainly isn't affected by money at all. This is all free stuff that you can mess around with. It doesn't affect you at all. But it's like gifts, you know, logging in at the weekend. You get a gift. If you're online for more than an hour, you got a gift of stuff. You just got some resources, some basic scrolls, like teleport scrolls, things like that. Things that made your life more convenient because you've been online for a while. That was unusual. And you guys might be used to it. I know a lot of you probably try more free-to-play MMOs than certainly I do. But it was very weird for me to see this stuff popping up, because I'm used to, obviously, a paid MMO where there's nothing like this whatsoever. But I kind of got used to it. It just kind of gave me stuff, and I just looked at it and was like, oh, okay, that's more stuff for some reason. And I was like, well, of course it is. They're trying to incentivize you to be online and to play the game. So it does make total sense why it does that. In the Valley of the Four Kings, then, it's very much like a daily Brawlers Guild. Which was my jam. This was my jam. I actually did this thing 3 times, despite the fact I would no longer get rewards for it. Because it kind of wants you to do it per day, if you want to. And what you do is get huge amounts of experience for it. So it gives you, it's like a really quick super leveling thing. But once you hit certain brackets, it's like 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and so on and so forth. It doesn't give you XP for more than 1 day. So you get this like big XP boost per day for the first time you do it. And then it will tell you, I think it's after like 5 rounds, it says to you, okay, you've got everything you can get from this for today. You can leave if you want to, no problem. Or you can keep going. So, me being me, I kept going. I kept going, because they were all puzzles. They were all puzzles, and they were mechanic puzzles, which I really enjoy. Mechanical puzzles are my jam, completely. So, figuring out what these bosses did, and how to deal with them, because they weren't just DPS checks, and I certainly hit the wall about level 12 or 13, where I was clearly undergeared for it, or I believe I was. Either that or I wasn't figuring out the trick to get it down and get it done. But then I wanted to do, can I do better? Can I use more potions maybe? Can I get some, I was, obviously, if you guys know me, it's like, I'm not bothered about gear, but can I go and get more stuff to help me get through this and push past it? What is the mechanics that I want here in order to defeat this boss? And came back in, got slightly better, and then had another go at it, but I really like this, and this was my first raid. Moving on to the next one then, I went to another dungeon, which was interesting because this was the first time that I encountered the guaranteed death scenario that's happened to me a couple of times while playing this. Not sure I like this. So in the dungeon, I was winning, clearly, because there was some skill shots to avoid. I was all over it, had my dodges on, had my skills going, was maximizing my deeps as best I could, and I died. It like instantly dropped me in a thing, and then it was like killing me. I was like, what? What am I supposed to do here? I need to pop a cooldown or something. I need to do something to get out of this. And it just wasn't happening. And then suddenly it cut into a cutscene. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to die here. Well, that sucks because I tried really hard at that and I don't want to die. Can I not kill it? Can I do this? But ultimately, it's story-based stuff. The story then. Wasn't digging the story. Wasn't as digging the story. But compared to the dungeons and actually fighting stuff, wasn't digging that too much. But luckily, they gave you the ability to skip literally everything if you didn't want to. Lots and lots of mini dialogue boxes for story. Every area seems to have a really sort of immense story going on with it. But it was a lot of dialogue boxes and mini quest turn-ins to continue the next part of this little story. I wasn't digging that too much, if I'm being totally honest. But luckily, you can skip it. You can absolutely just hold down the interact key and it'll just go, blah, 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 blah. You're all done. Move on to the next part. Get on with it. And then you get your standard quest information. Some PvP stuff. Well, the PvP, the big battles are actually on a schedule. Yeah, so they tout the castle sieges and stuff as being like 1,000 on 1,000 if they can get that's as many people who go into it. So in order to obviously make that happen, with a game that doesn't have millions and millions of people playing, they have it on a schedule, and that schedule is happening this evening as I'm recording this. So what I'm hoping to do is play a bit more and then get into some Castle Siege and maybe show you that if you guys are interested in trying to see what these huge, enormous battles look like. Moving on there. Is there anything else I didn't like? I think we have to talk about the model. I have never seen any MMO with a free-to-play model that has made everybody happy. It's very easy to find people very upset. A lot of people seem to see free-to-play as being free game, which is never the case. No one's just making an MMO just for free. Just, hey, here's an MMO, enjoy yourselves. That's not happening, but it's very difficult to balance that. So apparently it's super, super high-end. It could be a little tough on the PvP. I haven't got there yet to check it out. I might not get there, but I'll try and have a look myself. What I can say is that I'm not going to draw judgment on it yet to see how it works out the high end. I do like the idea of flying with the wings. That is very cool. I got a cool set of wings that I can fly around with, which was really nice. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. Revelations Online. I could talk forever on this, but for a more like in-depth overview of the individual bits, I checked the Mates What that we did the last 2 months. So far, I'm enjoying myself. Honestly, I genuinely am. I'm really enjoying doing the little dungeons, and I'm quite enjoying dealing with the boss enemies that all require some form of learning. And it's not just a case of, is this casting a debuff or something like that, which is kind of what I've been used to for a long time. Now it's like I need to interactively dodge and move around with these things, which I'm personally enjoying quite a lot. I'm personally enjoying that quite a lot. So, Revelations Online, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening. And use the tweet link down below, and we'll get some codes sent out to some winners in a couple of days. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.